Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education regular meeting for February 28th, 2017. Can we please have a roll call?
Mark Berry.
Present.
Leanne Charlotte present. John Rosen.
Present.
Julie Gottschall.
Present.
Richard Haig. Philip Hood.
Present.
Susan Ryder.
Present.
All right, so all present accounted for. We have a quorum. We can begin our meeting. And as always, we're going to start with our Pledge of Allegiance. If you all join me, stand and join me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, if it's okay with everybody, we're going to make a really minor adjustment in our agenda because we have some student recognition to do tonight and want to get these kids home so they can do their homework or go to bed or do whatever they need to do. So we're going to ask Dr. Rubenstein to step to the podium and introduce his students for recognition for the evening.
So as you more than likely know, each year we offer students who performed at or above the 90th percentile on reading and math assessments the opportunity to take part in the Northwestern University Midwest Academic Talent Search assessment. And so the process involves taking an off-level assessment to remove the ceiling for our students performing at top tiers of our curricular programs. So we know that these students are academically talented, but using an off-level assessment gives us an opportunity to see how far their academic talents stretch. So for students at the top end of the assessment continuum, the metaphor that we have often used is with respect to the height of people. So if you know that the 95th percentile for height in a woman is 6'2" tall, and the 99th percentile is at 8'2" tall. You know, that everybody is somewhere in there, the 95th to 95th percentile. In academic terms, we want to know if these students who are consistently testing in the 95th to 99th percentile are closer to the 6'2" or the 8'2", and that's why we give them an off-level assessment. Additionally, gathering this information helps us to program for these students in our schools. And by having the numbers of students participate in this assessment, and so for the last several years, this year we offered it to approximately 85 students who were eligible to take the PSAT 8-9 or the SAT. And that's been fairly consistent over the last 4 years. By offering it to that number of students, we're able to see how our students compare to other students up and down the North Shore and across the Midwest and across the country. Tonight we have two students. One of them is Hannah Burke, who's a 4th grade student from Mrs. Tompkins' class. And the second one is Michael Somoza, who's a 5th grade student from Mr. Ellis's class. And both of them took the PSAT 8-9 in January. And so I asked them to join us and share some of their experiences. So I'm going to ask Hannah Burke to step to the podium first. And she's actually got something prepared for us. So I will turn it over to Hannah.
Thank you for coming.
My name is Hannah Burke. I have been asked to talk about my experience in taking part of the new math assessment. Specifically, I was asked to discuss how I was selected to participate in the testing, what it was like taking an off-level assessment, something I enjoy about school, and a challenge that I am facing in school and how I am handling it. I was selected to participate in the assessment as a result of my test scores from the 2016 spring and fall math testing. Before taking the assessment, I didn't know how hard it would be. I found the test was very hard and challenging, but it was a good experience because I was exposed to more advanced topics and got to see how well I could do. It made me feel great after I took it and made me feel more confident. One thing I enjoy most about school is math. I like math because it comes easy to me and I like working with numbers and equations. One of my favorite teachers, Mr. Brown, is the math enrichment teacher. One of the challenges I face in school right now is the pressure of having to test into the math enrichment program with every year. We take a pretest with each unit to determine whether we will be in the enrichment group or in regular math for that unit. If I don't get a high enough score on my pretest, I stay in regular math. When this happens, I am disappointed because I often find that work is too easy and get bored quickly. So usually before these pre-tests, I feel anxious and I put pressure on myself to do well. I'm very upset if I don't get into enrichment. I would like to thank the board members for allowing me to speak to you today about my experience with the new maths assessment. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you sounded like, I was just going to say that was 8 feet 2 inches for sure. So.
Exactly, 8 feet 2 inches for sure. I would agree. Our next speaker is from 5th grade, and his name is Michael Somoza. So Michael, why don't you come on up here, and then we're just going to do a little bit of a question and answer, if that is all right. So Michael is a little bit more shy, I think. So Michael, if you can just talk a little bit about how you got selected to be a part of the new maths assessment program, and what did you think about when you got selected? So speak into the microphone and then also to the board.
I got selected for
the new maths assessment.
For new maths assessment. I got selected for new maths assessment because I did good on it, and okay, sorry.
Okay.
So you got selected because you did well on your past assessments, and what did you think about when you heard the news that you got selected?
I felt pretty good when I got selected because I guess not too many people get selected that much. And I just feel really good.
Yeah.
You should feel very good. Yep.
That's terrific.
Can you tell the board what it was like to take the assessment? And was it a hard assessment? Was it easy? Were there things that you felt good about?
Well, taking the new maths assessment, I felt kind of shy and nervous because it was a pretty hard test, and but when it came to questions I did know, I felt pretty good because I knew how to do them, and yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite subject in school right now?
My favorite subject in school is reading because I just like stories, and I just like to read.
Yeah, absolutely. And anything particularly challenging in school right now that is giving you trouble?
Something that has given me trouble in school and I'm not very good at in school is math, because I find that all the strategies to solve math, and math is just kind of confusing. And it makes me nervous when the teacher calls on me because I don't really know what to say, and yeah.
It is interesting for those of us who are not as good at math as you are to hear you say that when the teacher calls on you, you're a little bit nervous because you are probably far better at math than I am, or or something like that. So it's good to know that everybody gets those nervous math feelings. Anything else that you want to share with the board about the new math assessment or about school?
No.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. It takes a lot of
So it certainly takes all different kinds and all different backgrounds of lots of different students are taking the assessment, and there's not one particular profile, and everybody handles the assessment very, very differently, and we work as hard as we can to prepare our students. It's the exact same assessment, so All of our 8th grade students just took the PSAT 8-9 as they are headed into Lake Forest High School. So these are the same, that's the exact same assessment that these students just took. So it's a pretty rigorous assessment. So to hear them say, there were some questions that were easy and there were some questions that were hard is one of those things. And as we get the scores back and as we've started to get them back, it's pretty impressive to see how high our students really are. They are closer to that 8'2" mark, and I'm sure that you can see that very easily this evening. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming to talk to us.
Wanted to thank you guys for coming. You're very brave to stand up there and do that. We appreciate it. But you do not have to stay for the rest of the meeting. It's going to be long and not that exciting. So if you want to go, now's a good time to head out.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you for coming. So now we're going to flip back to our public comment piece, and I'm going to lead this off with a public comment on behalf of the board. We've prepared a statement that we would like to read publicly, and then we'll lead into the individuals who are here tonight. The board was deeply moved by the statement made by Mr. Moss at our February 14th board meeting, and we remain very concerned about the events described by former students of Charles Ritz, who taught at Lake Bluff Junior High between 1975 and 1985. We can't turn back time and change the events of the past. What we can do is be compassionate and respectful toward those impacted while being vigilant and proactive in our duty as a school board to provide a safe and supportive environment for learning. The board met in closed session last Thursday night to consider how we will continue to respond to this matter. We have strong policies and procedures in place to protect our current students, all of which meet or exceed those required by law. While these policies are reviewed on a regular basis, the Board Policy Committee has decided to examine ways we can further enhance these safeguards. The committee will consider an independent audit of our policies and procedures regarding student safety as a possible recommendation to the board. The Policy Committee will report back to the board on its work in open session. As many of you know, there's an ongoing law enforcement investigation into this matter, and the district must not interfere with that process. This includes limiting our public comments and discussions, and also informs our decision not to place an item regarding the recent petition presented to the board by Mr. Moss on our public action agenda. As always, during the public participation portion of our agenda, community members may address the board on any topic. We have turned over to the Lake Bluff Police Department and the Lake County State's Attorney all documents related to Charles Ritz, his employment in the district, and his interactions with students, including personnel records, notes, memos, and documents for their ongoing investigations. These same law enforcement officials, as well as our own legal counsel, has advised us against any investigation of our own. Therefore, based on what we know now, we have determined that the district will not initiate an additional investigation at this time. We will keep the community informed as this matter progresses and share updates on our assessment of current policies and procedures at future public board meetings and in direct communication to our parents and staff and community. Thank you. So now we have public comment, and Mr. Higgins has indicated that he would like to speak to the board. So if you'd like, you can do that now. Just state your name and your address and say what you'd like to say.
Thank you. My name is Mark Higginson from River Woods, Illinois. My family moved to Lake Bluff in September of 1982, and within months my brother was a victim of former Lake Bluff teacher Charles Ritz. The aftermath was a 30-plus year path of drug and alcohol abuses, prison sentences, and led ultimately to him taking his life 15 months ago. as his brother, this has left me with a lot of questions unanswered. What if he had come to me back in junior high to tell me what was happening? What if he had told my parents? What if the school had the safety and well-being of its students in mind in the 1980s and reported to police authorities the allegations against Fritz? Perhaps a 30-year run of additional victims would have been prevented. My motivation for being here is threefold. First and foremost, I want Charles Ritz to face the consequences of what he has done to his victims, my brother, his other Lake Bluff victims, and his California victims. Secondly, I want to thank Jim Moss, John Bowman, and other victims who have had the guts to come forward and tell their stories, all while being ridiculed and dismissed by some because it happened more than 30 years ago. And thirdly, I would like the school board to include the petition as an agenda item and to appoint an independent counsel to investigate. The same has been requested of Fullerton Joint Union School District in California, and they have signed and agreed to hire a special investigative counsel. Why not Lake Bluff? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Higginson. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else like to address the board? Not seeing anybody. We will then move to our next item, which is the addition of a discussion item where we offer the board the opportunity to add agenda items for future board meetings. So if anybody would like to add something, let me know. And you, as always, you can always notify myself or Dr. Sophie by email if you'd like something added to an agenda item in the future.
Mr. Higginson, I'm really sorry for your loss, and thank you for sharing with us. That was hard to hear. So I just feel we have to move on. It's board business, but I know we all share that sentiment. So thank you.
Can I say something?
Of course.
Well, you're going to need to come in the front. So it's just, if you could state your name and where you're from.
I'm Lisa Olson. I live in Lake Forest. I grew up in Lake Forest and have always loved our communities, our joint communities. My sister married Ed Higginson, and he grew up with us. He was our brother. He wasn't our brother-in-law. And he had the biggest heart. I think our family loved him more than they've loved any of us. I mean, he would visit my grandparents. They needed anything. He was there for everyone. Even to this day, I can hear his laugh. I mean, that just stays with you. He was just a wonderful person. And to hear, I just want there to be humanness in this. And I want you to think about this. I know you have a lot to consider, and I know you have, and I appreciate it. But there's got to be doing the right thing, and you have to decide what that is. But my niece and nephew do not have a father now. You know, you think about these boys, boy after boy after boy, who've been hurt, who in their developing years were given drugs and alcohol and forever changed their brains, were traumatized, and went on to have ripples throughout their lives and to hurt all these people. You know, I didn't learn about this till after Ed's death, and I could never, ever understand where the addiction came from and where the drinking and why it would get out of control. And when I learned of it, it just made sense when I heard what happened. And I'm just so sad that he's not here. I couldn't just hug him or help him, you know, and I'm glad that out of his death, a lot of people have come together. But I'm afraid I've learned of a lot of things happening like this, not just in Lake Bluff, but throughout Lake County, throughout everywhere. And the message needs to be strong. And think about the kids who are going through it now. The message is getting to them, and they need to know that they're supported and that it's okay to speak up and that they will be, you know, behind them. So I've never done this before, but I just feel compelled. Such a wonderful person, it's such a waste, and it's so much pain for so many people that is left. And I just hope that something good can come out of this. And more than anything, I want to see justice brought to, I can't even say his name, the teacher who was here and who went on to hurt people after being here. I mean, that's just, I feel traumatized by learning what they went through. If you heard some of these individual stories, I don't know how much you know, by just hearing them. I can't imagine living them. So please just make the right decision and consider that as Brother's Day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to go to our reports.
Nate and Margaret do not have reports this evening.
So, and it looks like we do not have a PTO report. We do not have a Alliance report. I believe we have something brief from Mr. Khan, our Director of Business Operations.
Jay actually has two things he will be reporting, a brief report on transportation. He also wants to make a correction on a public statement that was made at the last meeting.
Yeah. So the first thing I wanted to do is just clarify, there was a public comment at the last meeting where the speaker was quoting from our Illinois State Report Card and some of our financial information. There's an instructional spending per pupil of $10,092 per pupil in 2015, and then there's an operational spending per pupil of $19,012 per pupil, and she was adding those two together to get our total spending per pupil when one includes the other. So the total spending per pupil is only $19,012 per student. I just wanted to clarify.
Are we planning on responding to that in any other public way?
I spoke to her personally about that afterwards, and when I did speak to her, she seemed to understand that she had double counted, so
Yeah.
I don't think there's any need to get back to her personally.
Okay.
And then I also just wanted to give you an update on our transportation negotiations. Olson's most recent proposal was provided in your packet. Because we do have a joint contract with Lake Forest, we're not at the time, at this moment, unilaterally just able to decide anything. So we have gone back to Olson with kind of a counter proposal, and we're still in discussion. So we just wanted to keep you updated. And hopefully we'll get it resolved. If not, by the next board meeting, you'll have something to vote on by the final board meeting in March.
So what is shown on the screen and what was in our board packets is their proposal to us?
This is their proposal to us.
I just had one question. It seems like this year we have a slightly lower rate per route
Right.
in AM, PM, and next year the proposal is that it'll all be the same.
Right.
And
So
do you understand the basis for that change?
I asked for it. What we agreed to in principle was that we, from the beginning of the year through the end of January, we make Olson break even, and then from February on to the end of the year, take them up to a small margin. And because we had given Olson a 2% increase over last year's rates in this contract, whereas Lake Forest held them flat, we have less ground to make up. So we kind of said, if we're going to renegotiate all of this and blow it up, then we want to all be paying the same. So in other words, from the beginning of the year through now, we've paid more than Lake Forest has because we agreed to a price increase last year.
And I appreciate that, and I know you understand this far better than I do. But when I look at the lower rate that we're paying this year, the number up there is 92, I think, 92.35, as compared to District 67 paying 94, if I can read that. I would guess on non-shared buses it might be because they're coming a shorter distance to come to Lake Bluff, and that doesn't change next year. So I appreciate that we made a change that they didn't make, and I don't question that at all. But I'm trying to understand why next year we don't have a slightly lower rate than Lake Forest.
This year we're targeting the same weighted average rate for the entire year. That's the goal. For the first half of the year, we've paid a higher rate than they have. So for the second half of the year, we'll pay a lower rate so that we're all
So it equalizes out.
We're equal for the year. And then next year we'll again be the same rates.
Okay, well,
Take note too that they're still negotiating. There's a lot of things that could change in the next even 2 weeks.
Well, I certainly don't want to
So-
subsidize 67 and 115.
Yeah.
So if
Well,
we
maybe-
can pay a lower rate next year than they do, and there's some rationale for it,
The goal is to pay the
encourage you to
same.
think about that.
The goal is to pay the
Why?
same.
Why?
Because we're in a contract with them.
With 15 and 67?
Yeah.
Is
We
that
have
what
a
you-
mutual contract.
They geographically work very similar, and it's all the same buses. Some we're sharing, others we're not, but we negotiated a contract together, and then annually, Olson has come back to us for pricing kind of individually. And the goal is to target the same price this year for the whole year. And the only reason the second half of the year is lower for us is because it was higher at the beginning of the year.
I see.
So by the end of the year, we'll have paid the same weighted average rate for the whole year, and next year will be the same. We all have the same rate. You know, it costs the same per bus, whether they're sending our kids or their kids. So that's the revenue should be the same as well.
Keep in mind there are some interesting complications because of the fact we are in an agreement with them right now. So Jay will continue negotiating. He's been checking with me on a regular basis. All of this could change in the next 2 weeks, but you need to know kind of where we're at as of today.
Any other questions? All right, so we're going to move on to, we have no report from Dr. Rubenstein. There is no president's report. Any superintendent's report tonight?
I just have a very quick comment to let all of you know. As you know, when we opened LBMS with our renovations, there's still a few things that need to be done in the building to freshen it. Like the old classrooms need to be repainted, woodwork, some other items. Craig Sipka will be here at the next committee of the whole meeting, which we are changing to a special meeting because we'll have a couple things to vote on. He will be talking about proposed work at both LBES and LBMS over the summer. So I just wanted to let you know he was going to be back, and he's going to be talking to you about some things that we need to finish up. It's exciting work at both schools, so just know that that's coming.
Okay.
That's my report.
All right, so we're going to move on to action items, if that's okay with everyone. Action items with discussion. And we're going to start with the approval of the 2017-2018 licensed staffing plan. And if you recall, we discussed this at the February Committee of the Whole. And for our planning calendar, it's time to approve the staffing for licensed staff as we plan for next year. Overall, Dr. Sophie and the administration are recommending an overall decrease of 0.1 FTE for licensed staff.
Keeping in mind that we are also just keeping an eye on grade 3 class sizes because of the fact that we do have some high need issues at the 3rd grade, so we're just going to keep track of numbers until the June board meeting.
Any questions for the administration on this? So, may I have a motion to approve the 2017-2018 licensed staffing plan as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote, please.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Leanne Sherlow, yes. Julie Gutschall.
Yes.
Richard Hay.
Yes.
Philip Hood.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Barry.
Yes. Motion is approved. All right, on to item 8B, approval of the 2017-2018 non-licensed staffing plan. Again, as discussed in our February Committee of the Whole for our planning calendar, the administration is recommending an overall decrease of 0.8 FTE in the non-licensed staffing plan. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I thought I would just add what that accounts for is a decrease of 1.0 FTE in teaching assistants and an increase in our nurse from 0.8 to 1.0 because of the changing medical needs of students and our increased mandates in reporting.
Any comments or questions about that? Okay, may I have a motion to approve the 2017-2018 non-licensed staffing plan as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote, please.
Leanne Sherlow, yes. Julie Gutschall.
Yes.
Richard Hay.
Yes.
Philip Hood.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Barry.
Yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Moving on to item 8C. And again, as discussed at the February Committee of the Whole and for our planning calendar, We need to approve the 2017-2018 board meeting calendar, which was included in your board packet. Any questions or comments about the proposed meeting calendar for next year?
Once you approve this calendar, this will be my 10th board meeting calendar approval in my career. Just thought I'd share that.
I think we can do this one by roll call vote. All in favor?
It's like a Tom Brady for me.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Any motion?
Did I not say a motion? Okay, I have a motion to approve the 2017-18 board meeting calendar as presented by the administration.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. So even when I do try to save time, I screw up and not read the motion. So.
At least we'll save time.
Okay. Item 8D, the approval of 2018-2019 school calendar draft framework. As discussed in February at our committee of the whole, administration is recommending approval of the 18-19 calendar draft framework that came in your board packet. This calendar may change depending on the direction Lake Forest District 115 takes their account. Anything else that the administration would like to say on that?
If you remember, this was the calendar when we pulled it up in board book. There were no dates on it at the last meeting. What we do, we're actually mandated by state to plan ahead one additional school year and do a basic framework for the beginning and end of school year and the main breaks. So what you see totally aligns with Lake Forest High School right now. And just, I want to remind everybody that a year from now, we may wind up changing this based on what the high school does.
Just one observation. The one way in which we didn't align with Lake Forest High School this past year was the day after winter break is an institute day for us, and so the kids don't go back, but in high school, the high school kids do go back. I just wanted to raise that as having been expressed to me as a concern for some of the families who depend on high school sisters and brothers to help care for the children. I know we can't align 100%, but I wanted to raise that because it had been raised to me.
We do our best to try to align as many days as we can. We also balance, we have a calendar committee consisting of staff from both buildings, and they've also had some pretty big concerns on our calendars for childcare for themselves. And what we're seeing here, and I say it often, is we have a major sub shortage. So when there's childcare issues, that has a direct impact on our school district too. So thanks for pointing that out though. So that, again, this is just initial approval because next year we'll go back and re-examine it again.
Okay, any other questions or comments? So may I have a motion to approve the 2018-2019 school board calendar draft framework as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
I think I can do that by roll call too, right?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Now we move on to item 8E, the approval of the 2017-2018 student fees. And I'm not going to steal Jean's thunder and ask her if she would like to highlight the issues on that one. No? Want me to go ahead?
You can go at it
Okay.
because we've discussed
So
it.
we've discussed this at length, and in February committee, the whole meeting was the most recent time we talked about it. Administration is recommending a slight increase in all fees, raising the kindergarten fee and keeping the transportation fee at no cost until we determine the impact next year of changes in our transportation contract. We are also not going to recommend a safety/traffic fee this year, but will instead publicize and discuss with our parent community all the issues surrounding transportation and fees through the course of the next school year. Questions or comments?
Yeah, I've thought about this one a lot, and I just really see this, knowing what we know about transportation fees, I kind of see this as kicking the can down the road a little bit. I do think that the $100 across the board isn't onerous, and I think that when I say kicking the can down the road, I think there's things that we will learn by the imposition of the fee, and this is a parent speaking right now. I don't really like to pay any more than I need to, but I also think that we're going to learn a lot by having a fee that is imposed on everyone that will inform what we need to do as we take on these increased costs in future years. So I'll be voting no.
Anybody else?
I think, we talked about the fee that we would impose on everyone being the same. I was sensitive to objections from families who don't have an option of a bus in East Lake Bluff, saying that didn't seem like a fair way to impose a fee. So for me, I do think that we need still some more investigation and information before we decide what we're going to do with the fee.
To that point, I think kicking the can down the road is exactly right, and my preference would be to address, at least in some small part, the dwindling transportation fund that we have, and to impose a $100 fee for transportation to help determine how that affects the traffic problems that we think we have. However, I understand the administration's reason for doing it this way, and I'm prepared to vote yes. I do, however, think that additional data of knowing if $100 on the transportation cost for just the bus riders would really affect the people who choose not to do the bus now as much as we fear that it might. That being said, I respect what the administration is proposing, and I'm willing to vote yes for the proposal. But I think we know what's going to happen to the transportation fund. It doesn't take rocket science. We know it's dwindling. So I just wanted to state my concerns, but I will be voting yes.
No, we are kicking the can down the road. We know we're kicking the can down the road in hopes of having a more fulsome community discussion about how to address the need to build up the transportation fund and get all the kids to school in the most efficient way. So anyone who may be watching, note that this issue will be discussed and addressed throughout the coming year, and fees will be imposed next year. We're just going to have to decide the best way to do that. So
I think the only other thing that I would add that I think it's important to note is with no charge next year, we're also going to be looking at changes in transportation, such as not picking up in certain driveways, but instead having stops at the end of each street.
Oh yeah.
It will be a free service next year, and in the world of transportation, it's called kind of Cadillac service. And we really are going to need to look at any kind of cost shifts we can make or changes, and one of them will be we will be changing stops and having a few less stops.
So maybe we're no longer the Cadillac provider.
We will not. What's down from Cadillac? Because it's still going to be free transportation. It's just a little bit additional walk to the bus stop.
I must have missed that memo. My kids always want the corner.
We've been providing a lot of Cadillac service, and that we will need to be changing next year.
I've only heard of this Cadillac service being provided where people are living on a busy street, where you don't like.
I think there's 2 stops on my street right now.
There'll be some
block
changes.
And the end of the block. They can walk a little bit further.
Okay.
There'll be some changes.
For what it's worth, I agree with Phil. From a pure budget perspective, we've been funding free bus travel now for 3 years in a row? 4 years in a row, and I think it's time that we begin to address that. I think it's time now. So I agree with Phil on this one.
Anybody else like to say anything?
On the Cadillac service, but that we saw the fees that will pay for the bus. I presume that means Cadillac service or a lesser service. So I don't know how is that a cost?
You want to address that?
Change the
Well,
structure?
many school districts have just standard routes that are the same every year. The bus stops at this corner, and you can gain some efficiencies that way. We plan our routes every year according to where people live, and for the first month or 2 of the school year, or when the weather gets cold, get many calls from parents asking for bus stops to be moved or changed to accommodate their specific needs. And we've tried to do that whenever possible, but
Right, no, I get that. But my point is that it looks like
Well,
we're
it
paying
cut
a
costs.
fee that's bound by, it's determined by the split with
Oh,
Lake Forest,
I
and
don't-
it is what it is. So Cadillac or not, we're going to pay the same amount.
Right.
So, why not go for Cadillac?
I think it has probably more of an impact on the service, just the changes in stops. When you have sub-bus drivers, they don't know the routes. That's where a lot of the confusion comes in. Where, I think at the beginning of the year we had kids complaining, oh, the bus driver doesn't know the route. I mean, if it's the same route all the time, then
That won't be
we shouldn't
happening.
do that. So it's, you know, it's something where they can manage their drivers better. I think it's not going to significantly change our costs, but it is a efficiency that we can put in to try to keep our increases on an annual basis as low as possible.
Anybody else? Okay. You're going to need a motion to approve the 2018 student fees as presented by the administration.
So moved. Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Hood,
No.
Ryder,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Morosen,
No.
Charlotte, yes, Gottschall,
Yes.
Peg.
Yes.
Okay, motion is approved. Item 8F, approval of the travel resolution. Another item we discussed at our February Committee of the Whole. We have already approved changes to our travel policy. It is also mandated that in order to enforce the policy, a resolution needs to be passed regarding the maximum allowable reimbursement. Dr. Sophie has worked with Mr. Khan as well as our attorneys from Hodges, Louisiana to recommend the travel resolution included in your board packet to both align with changes to our travel policy as well as allow flexibility in the implementation of this policy. Any questions or comments about this? Item? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the travel resolution as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ryder,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Morosen,
Yes.
Charlotte, yes, Gottschall,
Yes.
Peg,
Yes.
Hood.
Yes.
Motion is passed. Item 8G, disposition of property. We do this every year. Mr. Khan provides us with a lengthy list. Do you want to give us a little summary?
As per board policy, we are required to notify the board when we dispose of property, the school district property. We have already disposed of some of this because it was deemed to have diminutive value. In general, our order of priority is to try to sell items, then to donate, then recycle, and if none of those are available, then to dispose of, scrap, throw away. So the list that you have before you are some items that we've recently disposed of or will dispose of in the near future. A lot of furniture and excess things left over from the LVMS renovation that we couldn't reuse. We'd been storing them and paying for storage while we attempted to sell them or to donate them to other school districts and did not have any interest. And it was determined that the most efficient way to dispose of them was just to have them take them to the dump, so that's what we did.
Jay, I have a question.
Yes.
If this is required only to notify the board, I just noticed this now, can we put this either under consent agenda or your report,
Yes.
or does it have to be approved?
I had noticed that as well. I was going to tell you later.
Okay.
There's really no action that needs to be taken.
So, do you know if this is something, as a board, would you be comfortable with it in consent agenda? Or is it something you just think should be in his report? Because he's required to notify you.
Whatever's easiest.
Doesn't make any, all right. We don't even really need to vote on it then. It doesn't need to be approved.
Okay.
So,
You comfortable
So
with
we're
that?
notified.
I mean, you could vote that.
Duly
Thank you for notifying us.
Yes.
You're welcome. The rest is a lot of surplus technology.
All right.
Put the food in them?
Okay, now we're on item 8G, 8H, approval of policies for second read. And what we're dealing with here is our board policy committee spent hours and hours and hours going over a total of 58 policies, 9 of which dealt with school boarding, 9 of which dealt with operational services, 10 of which dealt with general personnel, 9 on instruction, 13 on students, 5 on community relations, and another 3 on additional policies having to do with ethics, conduct, compensatory time off, and harassment of students. Was the policy committee like to make any comments on any specific policies?
I would. This is the second read, so I made some comments last time for first read, and we did look at this very closely as a committee. And I just wanted to supplement my comments from last time by saying I've taken a closer look at the ethics and conduct policy, which is where significant changes were made that are certainly in line with some of the comments we've been hearing related to the particular teacher situation. So I think we've made great strides and good improvements in this policy. So I'm going to recommend that it be approved again for second read. That being said, I'd also like to have the policy committee sit down and really focus on the particular policies that would address, prevent any sort of teacher abuse situation. So, you know, this was done as part of, as you say, 58 policies. It was given due attention, but I think we really need to drill down and look at all of those policies and procedures as a separate, discrete matter. So with that being said, I would certainly approve this for now. It looks good, but I want to make sure it is as good as it can be and that all the policies work together to prevent any sort of situation in the future.
Julie, to your point, I think it would be very helpful as part of the plan to audit our policies that you referenced just now, for us to put in one place all the information that we have that bears on the student-teacher interactions. And many of those are in a single section of the board policy book, but others might be in a handbook, for example. And it feels like now is a good time for us to align all of those and make sure that they are all saying the same thing and saying what we need for them to say, and that they're as strong and as they can possibly be.
Right, as tight a safety net as we can build.
I've got one question. Are you interested in, who would you like to do the audit? Would you like to do the audit?
I think we need to meet as a policy team and look at it ourselves first and do that assessment. I'd like to
consider it first.
Yeah, consider it first.
Okay.
Because we've spent quite a bit of time on these policies already. I think we've gone beyond what I would assume most districts do in terms of looking for other sources of information, looking at what other districts are doing, adding to it from our own expertise in terms of law, social work, education. So I think it would be good for us to consider all that first.
Yes.
Consider the possibility of someone outside doing it, and then ultimately come back and do a review with the board, because I think it'd be worthwhile to do a little bit more in-depth report for the board's sake and for anyone in the community that wanted to know more about where we stand.
Then I will work on getting a meeting together. I do want to make one comment. Our handbook is directly aligned with our policy manual, because Terry Hodges reviews that and works on that with Kevin every summer. So our handbook literally has policy just reprinted right in the handbook. So those align very well. And certainly anytime we change a policy, it's flagged, and then we know we've got to change that in the handbook. So
yeah, I have no reason to think that there's any disalignment, unalignment. I'd just like to look at it as a
absolutely,
absolutely. This particular topic and all of the protections in place are they safe?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions or concerns here? So, may I have a motion to approve board policy for second read / final approval as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Charlotte, yes. Gottschall?
Yes.
Haig?
Yes.
Hood?
Yes.
Ryder?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes.
Morosen?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Item 8I, the personnel report. This month personnel report includes a non-licensed resignation for Adam Schaefer, a special needs aide at the elementary school effective February 17th of 17. It includes a licensed resignation for Heidi Bailey, a 6th grade science teacher at Lake Bluff Middle School effective spring of 2017. And licensed FMLA leave request for a Cheryl Bretchek for an FMLA leave effective February 22nd of 17. For Aaron Peckler, medical leave effective, there's a lot of individual dates here. I'm not sure.
Just say for the end of the year and then the beginning of the year based upon her due date.
For the end of the year and the beginning of the year based on her due date. And she's listed twice there, is that okay?
Yes, that's the way it has to be because of the way her.
All right, so it's really only 2 individuals with several FMLA dates. Any questions or comments or concerns? So we have a motion to approve February 28th, 2017 personnel report as presented by the administration.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ryder?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes.
Rosen,
Yes.
Charlotte, yes. Gotcha.
Yes.
Hay.
Yes.
Hood.
Yes.
Motion is approved. All right, our last action item of the evening is our consent agenda. This month, the consent agenda includes the treasurer's report, the impress report, the bills report, the P-card report, open session meeting minutes from January 24th, 2017, which were regular Board of Education minutes, regular Board of Education meeting minutes, February 4th, 2017, Committee of the Whole meeting minutes, and February 23rd, special meeting. As well as closed session minutes from January 24th, 2017 for the regular Board of Education meeting minutes, for February 4th, 2017, Committee of the Whole meeting minutes, and the February 23rd special meeting. Any one of those items that anybody would like to pull out to discuss and not vote on in the consent agenda? Not hearing any. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda for February 28th, 2017 as presented by the administration.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Hay.
Yes.
Hood.
Yes.
Ryder.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Rosen,
Yes.
Charlotte, yes.
Okay, motion's approved. That's our last discussion item, our agenda, action item. So FOIAs, we have no FOIA report this month. However, we've received several FOIA requests this month that are currently being processed and will be reported on at our March regular board meeting. So we now wind down our meeting with the opportunity for public comment. Would anybody like to address the board, or anybody on the board like to say something?
I would like to make a request.
Sure.
Given the fact that I and the rest of the board are fairly heavily involved in our budget process, and we generally have created budgets with no contingencies, not much flexibility, I think I would like the administration to describe to us now and in the future how much finances have been expended on the Ritz matter and how much time we've spent, so we're kept in touch with that. I know that we are approaching fairly quickly our legal budget, getting pretty close to what we did budget. And I also know there's some pluses and minuses during the course of the year, but I think it would be advisable for the board to understand exactly where we stand with respect to those financial matters.
Jay, I'll work with you on that. There's also a FOIA regarding that, so we can use the FOIA and add this month's legal expenses and report out next month.
Anybody else? All right. Not hearing any other public comments, I'm going to ask for an adjournment at 7:54 p.m.
So moved.
A motion to adjourn. So moved. And second by?
Second by me.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.